In a small forgotten village where the earth was always red and the nights were always quiet, there lived a young girl named Amara, who learned too early that life did not wait for children to grow. Amara was an orphan who lived with her grandparents. They were poor but lived happily. She had once known laughter. She had once known warmth. But all of that ended when the season sickness came into her home and refused to leave. First, it took her grandmother. Then, before the soil on her grandmother's grave had even settled, it returned for her grandfather. And just like that, Amara became what the village pitied the most, a hopeless orphan. From that day, she moved through the village like a shadow. She fetched water for neighbors in exchange for leftover food. She slept on thin mats. She listened to other children talk about school, while she watched and admired them from a distance, holding her hunger in. People were kind. But kindness has limits when poverty is shared by all. It was during one of those quiet afternoons, when the sun stood directly above the village, that help arrived, wearing a familiar face. Her estranged mother's eldest sister, a woman who had left the village many years ago and built a life in the city. She arrived from the city, dressed in fine clothes, her skin glowing with comfort. She spoke big English and carried herself like someone who had escaped the claws of village suffering. When she saw Amara, she sighed loudly and shook her head, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. She spoke of family. She spoke of blood. She spoke of responsibility. She promised the elders that she would take the child to the city. She promised education. She promised a better life. She promised that Amara would lack nothing under her roof. And because hope is a powerful thing, they believed her. Amara believed her too. The day Amara left the village, she carried nothing but a small bag and a heart full of dreams. As the bus moved farther away from the only home she had ever known, she told herself that suffering had finally ended. She did not know it was only changing shape. The city did not welcome her gently. It was loud, restless, and unforgiving. But even then, she smiled, because she believed it was the sound of progress. The first night in her auntie's house, Amara slept on the cold floor. She told herself it was temporary. By the second morning, reality introduced itself. She was woken before dawn. Buckets were placed in her hands. Instructions were fired at her like commands. She was told to clean, to cook, to wash, to serve. There was no mention of school. At first, Amara did not complain. She believed that sacrifice came before reward. She believed that once her grandaunt saw her obedience, kindness would follow. Days turned into weeks. Her hands became rough. Her back learned pain. Her nights became shorter. Her days longer. Each morning, she watched her auntie's children dress in neat uniforms and leave for school, while she remained behind with brooms and dirty plates. Each time she asked about school, the question was silenced with anger or laughter. She was told she should be grateful. She was reminded that food was not free. Slowly, love turned into fear. Fear of waking up too late. Fear of asking the wrong question. Fear of resting when her body begged for rest. The house no longer felt like family. It felt like a place of survival. Not long after, her auntie introduced her to the tray. At first, it was small, light, easy to carry. Bread, sachet water, ground nuts. She was told it was just to help the house, just until things got better. But things never got better. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, Amara balanced the tray on her head and stepped into the streets. While children her age walked past in polished shoes and neatly ironed uniforms, she stood by the roadside calling out prices with a voice still half asleep. Amara became a familiar sight in the neighborhood. Every morning, people saw her pass with a tray on her head, her shoulders too thin for the weight she carried. Some women shook their heads when she walked by. "Such a small girl," they whispered. "Is this how children are raised now?" Sometimes, a passerby slipped a coin into her hand without collecting anything. Sometimes, an old woman bought from her, even when she didn't need to. But pity, no matter how sincere, could not change her situation. By evening, she still returned to the same house to continue with the house chores where she stopped in the morning. And when she complained of tiredness or pains, she was beaten and punished severely. There was only one person who spoke to Amara like she mattered. A girl from the next compound, Mary. They met by accident one evening when Amara sat outside, too weak to move after a long day. The girl noticed her untouched tray and asked quietly, "Have you eaten?" Amara shook her head, without saying much. Then Mary broke a piece of her food and pushed it toward her. From that day, whenever punishment stole Amara's meal, Mary found her. When rain fell, it did not excuse Amara. She hawked under heavy clouds, water soaking through her clothes, her feet sinking into mud. When the sun burned, it burned for her alone. Sweat rolled down her face, stinging her eyes, but she dared not wipe it for too long. If she returned home with even one item unsold, punishment waited. No food, no explanation. She would sit in a corner of the house, stomach twisting, watching others eat, pretending not to feel the hunger that screamed inside her. At home, work never ended. After hawking, she washed plates piled high. She scrubbed floors until her fingers ached. She cooked meals she was not allowed to eat. She bathed children who called her names they learned from their mother. Any complaint was seen as rebellion. Any sign of weakness was treated as insult. On days her body could no longer keep up, when pain bent her spine and exhaustion slowed her steps, she was accused of laziness. Sometimes, she was locked away in a small, dark room. No light, no food. Sometimes, blows followed. And in that darkness, Amara learned to cry silently. She learned that pain makes noise only when someone is listening. The city watched her suffer and moved on. The neighbors noticed the patterns. They saw the girl hawking while others went to school. They saw bruises that changed places. They heard crying at night, short, careful cries that tried not to exist. But none of them was bold enough to confront Amara's auntie about it. She was known in the neighborhood as a troublemaker, loud, aggressive, and quick to turn any accusation into chaos. Her friend Mary from the next compound noticed too. "You should run," she whispered once. Amara shook her head. "Where will I go?" she asked. Mary had a long thought, but had no answer. "Don't worry, everything will be fine," she said, comforting her. Months passed. Then years. Amara grew thinner, older than her age. She no longer asked about school. She no longer dreamed loudly. She just survived. Until the afternoon, fate intervened. The sun stood mercilessly overhead that day. The road shimmered with heat. Amara had been hawking since morning, her tray heavier than her strength. She crossed the road slowly, calling out weakly. When speed met flesh, the sound came first. Then the pain, then nothing. People screamed. Traffic stopped. A car screeched to a halt. A wealthy man stepped out, shock freezing his body as he looked at the child, lying motionless on the road. Blood trickled. Her tray lay scattered, forgotten. Guilt rose faster than fear. He did not hesitate. He carried her into his car and sped to the hospital. When news of the accident spread through the neighborhood, people gathered. Someone mentioned Amara's name, and when Mary, Amara's friend from the next compound, heard, she did not hesitate. She immediately ran to the hospital. At the hospital, she stood quietly by the door at first, afraid she didn't belong there. When she finally saw Amara lying unconscious on the bed, her knees weakened. She stepped closer, held her hand, and stayed beside Amara. For days, Amara lay between worlds. Machines hummed. Nurses whispered. Silence filled the space where her voice had long been ignored. She was in a coma, and for the first time in her life, Her body rested without fear of punishment. When Amara finally opened her eyes, her friend saw it first. "She is awake," she said happily, with a wide smile on her face. Confusion settled over Amara's face immediately. The ceiling above her was white, too white. The air smelled strange, clean. This was not the street. This was not her aunt's house. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy. A voice spoke softly beside her. "How are you feeling?" Amara turned her head slowly. A man stood there, watching her with concern. She had never seen him before. Amara tried to answer, but her voice came out thin and tired. I don't know," she whispered. The man nodded gently. "You were hit by a car. You've been unconscious for days. You're safe now." She blinked, trying to remember. "Oh no," Amara shouted in fear. "My tray, my goods. Oh no, my auntie will kill me." She tried to step down from the bed, but she felt a sharp pain all over. "Ah," she screamed. "Relax, don't move. You are not strong yet," the man said, trying to calm her down. After a moment, he asked, "What is your name?" "Amara," she replied quietly. He repeated it slowly, as if committing it to memory. "Amara, who do you live with?" She hesitated. "My auntie," she said after a pause. "I live with my auntie here in the city." The man frowned slightly. "Auntie?" he asked. "Then why were you hawking on the road instead of being in school?" The question hung in the air. Amara looked away. For a moment, she said nothing. Then slowly, words began to fall from her lips. She said, "There's no money for school," Amara murmured. "I hawk every day. If I don't sell everything, there's no food for me." The man stiffened. "And school?" he asked carefully. "Have you ever gone to school?" Amara shook her head. "No, sir." He drew a slow breath. "And the bruises on your body?" Amara swallowed. "She beats me when I complain," she said. "Sometimes she locks me inside a dark room. No food, no light." Her voice was calm, too calm. Pain had lived there too long. The man turned away briefly, his jaw tightening. When he faced her again, his voice was softer. "And your parents?" he asked. "Where are they?" Amara's eyes clouded. "My mother died when she gave birth to me," she said. "They said there were complications. My grandparents told me she was too young and weak, and there was no money for proper treatment." She paused. "They raised me after that." "My grandparents. And them?" he asked. "They died too," Amara replied quietly. One after the other, silence filled the room. "That was when my auntie came for me," she continued. "She said I shouldn't stay alone in the village." The man nodded slowly. "Which village?" he asked. Amara answered without thinking. "Omiju village in Tura town." The man froze. "Wait," he said sharply. "Did you just say Omeju village?" "Yes," Amara replied, surprised by his tone. "My grandparents lived there. That's where my parents are from." His heart began to pound. He leaned closer. "What is your mother's name?" he asked urgently. Amara frowned slightly. "My grandparents said her name was Juliet," she answered. "Juliet from Omeju village." The world stopped. The man staggered back as if struck. Tears welled up instantly in his eyes. "No," he whispered. "This can't be." Amara stared at him, frightened. "Sir, are you okay?" He covered his face with his hands. Memories started flashing back. A village posting during youth service. A young girl. A pregnancy he denied. Fear of his parents. A decision to walk away. He looked at Amara again. His voice trembled. "Amara, how old are you?" She answered. The numbers matched perfectly. His legs gave way, and he sat heavily on the chair beside her bed. "My God," he whispered. My God, Amara's heart raced. Sir, what is happening? He struggled to speak. I knew your mother, he said slowly. Long ago. Her eyes widened. He looked at her fully. Now her face, her eyes, her features, truth stared back at him. Tests were ordered quietly that same day. When the results came back, there was no doubt. Amara was his daughter. The child he abandoned had returned to him through pain. When he finally told her, Amara cried, not loudly, but deeply. My grandparents always said things about a young man who impregnated their daughter and ran away, no trace. So you are that man, Amara said, tears flowing down her cheeks. She cried for the mother she never knew, for the father she never had, for the suffering that never needed to happen. Her father held her tightly as they both weep. I'm sorry for all the pains you had to go through all these years, her father whispered in tears, still hugging her tightly. You are safe now, my child. You are safe now, he continued, tapping her gently. Days later, it was time to go home. The hospital doors slid open slowly, sunlight spilling in. Amara stepped out carefully, leaning slightly on her father. Her legs still ached from the accident, her body still fragile, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in years. When they arrived, the gate opened to a sprawling compound. Lush gardens, fountains, flowers blooming in every corner, wealth and comfort, unlike anything Amara had ever imagined. Her father's parents, tall and regal, rushed forward, arms open wide. Amara, our granddaughter, her grandmother cried, lifting her into a warm embrace. Tears blurred Amara's vision. She felt hands pat her back, stroke her hair. Voices spoke words of love she had never heard before. You will never be harmed again, her grandfather promised, his voice steady, firm. No one will ever touch you. You are safe now. Amara felt a warmth in her chest she had long forgotten. Her eyes filled with tears, not for pain this time, but for freedom, for being finally seen, finally protected. Her father led her through the house, showing her room. It was beautiful, spacious, decorated with care. A soft bed, books on a shelf, a small desk, and walls painted in her favorite colors. Sunlight spilled across the floor. This is yours, he said. All yours. No one will ever take it from you. Amara sank onto the bed, tears streaming freely. She touched the bed, the curtains, the books, every detail, a silent promise of safety and belonging. Days later, her father went to the authorities. He recounted everything, the auntie's cruelty, the abuse, the neglect, the forced labor, the hawking under the sun, the punishments, the pain she endured. Neighbors testified too, the ones who had been afraid, the ones who had seen bruises, heard her cries. The auntie was arrested. Courtroom doors opened and closed on her case. Sentencing followed. She could no longer hide behind family ties. Justice had a voice, and it was loud. A new chapter began for Amara. She entered a bright classroom for the first time. Her uniform was neat and fitted. Her backpack swung lightly over her shoulder. Every step felt lighter than the last. To her surprise, she saw her friend from the neighborhood at the entrance of the school gate. Their eyes met. A small smile passed between them, a silent understanding that they had both survived and would survive together. The teacher welcomed her warmly. Other children looked curiously, then kindly. Every lesson, every page, every day was proof that she could exist without fear. And her father sometimes visited, walking her home after school. Her grandparents watched from the veranda, their eyes full of pride and love. No one touched her. No one yelled at her. No one demanded her labor. For the first time, Amara felt home, protection, and belonging. She smiled freely, a smile no longer shaped by suffering, but by hope. What did this story make you feel? Do you believe family is defined by love or by blood? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African folk tales. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that inspires, teaches, and moves you. Thank you for watching.